we live streaming this? Thank you.
We're live streaming this.
Morning. Okay.
It was in the newsletter. It is being live streamed.
Great.
YouTube.
It's in YouTube?
Yes, that's what she's doing. It's nice. All right.
Town hall is starting. Come on in. All right. Yeah. Yes. Okay, good morning. Welcome, everybody. As you know, it's 2 weeks until our our annual congregational meeting, and the board in the last couple of weeks has developed a proposed budget, which we will vote on at the annual meeting. And so we just wanted to take this time, since it was kind of an unusual budget year, to make sure that we could share with you what our thinking is, and also get any questions or comments or concerns from you. So I will turn it over to our treasurer. Oops, no, I'll turn it over to myself. Why is this here? I hope most of you know that we have been in the process of reorganizing, changing our organization so that we are more cohesive and have better communication, and to make sure that all the teams and committees have a home and a voice and can be advocated for with the Board of Trustees. And so I have this up here today just to refresh your memory, but also to let you know that we are going to be showing our budget in this format now, so that expenses, instead of being worship expenses or music expenses or RE, they will be organized and shown by these ministry teams, sometimes called pillars. Okay, any questions about that? All right, Robert, take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. So I'm here to tell you, where are we? How are we doing? What's our future look like? And then to go over the proposed budget that the Board of Trustees came up. So if you look at our current income, basically we are almost $200,000 in pledge. The rest of them are pretty much self-explanatory. These are other contributions and our loose offerings, endowment income, property usage, fundraising, and interest income. So for a total of about $263,000. Our budget, which is 12 equal increments over the fiscal year, comes up to $287,000, almost $288,000, which means that we're not quite where we want to be. We're about $24,000, almost $25,000 shy of where we budgeted the amount. I will tell you this, fundraising was a big win. Please give everyone that was really great. Our endowment income was above what we expected it to be. That was also a good thing. You'll hear more about the endowment in a minute. Let's go through expenses. If we look at the expenses, as Trish said, we're now talking through 5 ministries. Communication, administration, worship, music, and RE are our 2 biggest. Stewardship, which includes B and G now, is our 3rd, and then there's 2 smaller ones. If we look at it, we're about $243,000. And basically, we budgeted, again, 12 equal pieces of $285, which means that we are about $42,000 less than what we expected. Why is there a discrepancy? Everybody seems to ask that question. So first of all, there were gaps in our staffing. Basically, and I'm going to trip over this thing, then you have a workers' comp accident. There are gaps in our staffing where a position may not have been filled for a month or 2. Well, that was hours that we were thinking we were going to be paying that we weren't. We have lower than normal B&G repair and maintenance, which is a good thing. And then finally, our healthcare insurance premiums were reduced. Thank you very much to those that are responsible, but that is why we have such a discrepancy. If we look at how we're doing overall, in actual, we have a surplus of about $19,000, almost $20,000. Should only be $2,000, so bit of a over where it was. Is there any questions on the money that we actually are in right now? Yes, ma'am.
So this is our 10-month picture. Do we think this reflects what the 12-month picture will be?
Yes, I've been watching that closely. Thank you. The question was, this is 10 months. What about the next 2 months? Could something major change? And it could always happen. We could lose air conditioning. That would be a big deal. I have been watching it very carefully. I don't see it. I mean, if you look at where our money, where we spent less money than I thought, we're not going to make up those employment gaps. And I can talk about that a little later. But so I think that's a good question. I think we're going to maintain where we actually think we might carry over a surplus, which I'll get to in a minute. Other questions? Yes. Oh.
Just a suggestion that I made to myself. I changed the amount that I was pledging for next year. I was able to raise it some. And I called the bank the other day and changed it now. If we're able to raise our pledge by $5 or $5,000, you know, why not do it for an extra couple of months and, you know, give the church an extra couple nickels, and if we all do it, then there'll be a few extra dollars.
Correct. And
Thank you, Earl. I really appreciate that sentiment. Thank you.
I'm going to say that our budget for next year is a moving target, and we'll always revise it as new information comes in.
Do you expect to get all the pledges for this year in? And my question is this, is that last year in July, I got a sort of mortifying call saying I hadn't contributed everything. And I was like, oh my God. And so I'm wondering if what are we doing to make sure that everyone's put in their pledges that they pledge? Because people like me sometimes forget.
No, very good question. We are right on target with making all of our pledges for the year is based on the percentage of the year and the percentage of the pledges. 2 things you need to understand. We also included a markup that we said we'll get new members, maybe new pledges, so we could sort of dial up a little higher on the pledge income for the year. So our pledges that we had, we can see in something called Breeze, and what we put down is what we think we're going to get are 2 different numbers. And actually, we're looking quite good on that. I'm sure we're going to lose a few pledges. I know that the board and I will say the financial secretary are looking at that data. I believe that they keep a pretty good eye on it and hopefully are a little more proactive this year on saying, hey, your pledge is due, can you do it?
Yeah, I think Jimmy, the financial secretary, will be sending statements to everybody saying, here's what you pledged, here's what you paid. Hopefully they're the same.
Other questions? Okay. All right, so we wanted to kind of give an idea of where do we stand overall in things that maybe you don't normally see. We're going to get a little presentation about our endowment, but just to quickly go over that, we have a checking account, we have a money market savings account, and then we have something we call the reserve fund, which shows you that we've got about $225,000 that are available. We believe this reserve fund is mainly for our capital investments. And then we have our endowment fund, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then finally, the major liability that we have is our SBA loan, or Small Business Administration loan, which is a wonderful 2.5% over 30 years. We pay that back slowly. We probably could have paid more back, but when you got 2.5% or 2.75% interest, you can make more money in our market, in our money market, than you can paying that off. So that's just one question people might ask. Now, I'm going to hand it over. Susan, it's your turn.
Just one thing I want to add is that for me, these numbers look really healthy. So, you know, while we may be having some operating budget issues, we're on sound financial footing. And a lot of that is due to our endowment, which is growing.
Everyone knows that, I thought it was, is this not working? Is this not working?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good. First, everyone knows, I thought it was going to be earlier in the presentation, that we are dealing with a shortfall for next year, and that's kind of the purpose here. So I had planned some remarks around that, anticipating a question that, oh, well, if we have a shortfall, why can't we tap into this big, almost $700,000 in the endowment? So let me tell you just a little bit about the endowment. Some of you are very familiar and some are not. First to tell you, I'm Susan Bonavie. I'm on the endowment board of trustees, as is Jeff Bambro. He's our treasurer. He's the hardest working person there, along with Carol Ulmer, Laurie Clement, and Rebecca Wilson. Rebecca's here. The reserve fund, I want to just be sure you understand the difference between the reserve fund and the endowment fund. The reserve fund is under the control of the governing of the board of trustees of the church. The endowment has a completely separate trustees, and that is just for the endowment, and that is a legal requirement. I mean, it has to be that way because the endowment is a separate legal entity that people have contributed to. I want you to know that the purpose of the endowment is to provide ongoing income to an organization, to this church. That's the purpose of every endowment. You might think it's to grow wealth and so that we're saving up money so we can buy a new church someday. That's not what it's for. That's what the reserve is for if we have capital improvements down the line and something. The purpose of the endowment is to provide income every year. Our endowment was established in 1967, and there was a promise made to every donor that we would keep the principal in perpetuity and to only use its earnings to maintain the church's buildings, okay? That's what it has to be for. There have been times in the past, and we're not going to try and second guess decisions that were made 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't know what I would have done in a crisis situation. But in the past, that endowment has been invaded. The money has been used in dire circumstances for the roof, for whatever. But it's not supposed to be done, and it no longer be done because our endowment is now managed by the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. And when we made that decision, we had to promise that we would follow their rules. And their rules include following the law, following the description of the endowment, which says you can only get an annual distribution from the endowment within certain percentages. It cannot be invaded. So, sorry, the endowment can't rescue the church in terms of budget shortfalls and so forth. I will stipulate that if there were a nuclear war, if there were, something absolutely not just a budget shortfall, there are rules under which you can invade such an endowment. It would probably have to have a lot of approvals. Jeff, you were saying it would have to be, a legal. It would have to go through a court of law. Some legal entity would have to say that it's okay to do that. That's not the case right now, and we certainly don't anticipate it. Just to let you know a little bit about what's going on with the endowment, in the last 6 years, our endowment has grown from $468,000 to the almost $700,000 that you see here. The wonderful, yay. The good news, bad news about that is that the good news is it has come almost entirely from two places: market growth, because it's been invested very wisely, especially since we started letting the Community Foundation do that for us. And also, the Community Foundation has given us a $100,000 grant, $25,000 every time we deposited $100,000 of our endowment with them. So that was an immediate 25% return on the money that we moved over to the Community Foundation. It's been a really good, it was kind of a scary decision, but the board made it and then got it endorsed by the congregation, and it's turned out to work out just wonderfully. Also, just years ago, the endowment was giving the church about $15,000 a year as its contribution toward the budget. You can see, I thought it was going to be up here. It will be something like $26,000 this year for the new budget that the endowment will be able to give. That's a significant amount of our operating budget, but it's all you can get. That's the way that works. I think that's about all I have to say. The bad news about that growth. I told you that the good news was we got all this money in grants and we got all this money in market growth. The bad news is that we haven't gotten a lot in contributions. We don't actively go out and seek monthly or regular contributions to the endowment because we recognize that the number one thing that we all need to contribute to is our annual pledge. That's what we run the church on. What we do actively seek people's generosity is to put us in your will, put us in your estate. And so the good news is nobody's died lately. But the bad news, the bad news is we really do need more people to think about putting a small, tiny percentage of your estate into the endowment, so that you will have that legacy for this church, and we will continue to grow what we can do every year. Does anyone have questions about the endowment? Anything else? That's good.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. All right, so the proposed budget for 26-27. The priorities were to achieve a balanced budget, to reconfigure communications and religious education, to shift more resources towards adult learning and communication, to provide some funding for guest speakers, musicians on Sunday worship services, and then, of course, continuing the funding for building maintenance and repairs. Nothing really controversial. You want to say something to that?
Yeah, I just want to say a little bit about the budget process, which this year we did through the ministries. So each ministry team leader consulted with their teams and committees and submitted a budget request. There were some requested increases, which we looked at and tried to accommodate. But I'll also say that it was a challenging process for the board to meet this first goal, achieving a balanced budget. And we had to make some choices, and you'll hear about them more in a little bit.
And I commend the board for making those choices. To me, a balanced budget is part of the requirement that I have, being the treasurer. So, if we look at a 7-year pledge review, these are the actual pledges at the end of each year. And as you can see, we've sort of centered around 200,000. We had a couple, the 23, 24, and 24, 25, where we saw an increase. And we honestly took it even higher on the next one, which our actual pledge, and the reason it's in black is because it's still budgeted, is $234,005. So far this year, for the new year 26-27, we have 202,890. I think that's gone up slightly more. Okay, so the point being is we did not see as much, and when we looked into why, there were a loss of the number of pledge units that were the main difference. We had some people move away. We had a few people decide they didn't fit our church anymore. We got some new people in as well. But the point being is, so we had 203,000 in order to do our budget from. And that was less than what we were hoping, as you can see by the thermometer. So our proposed budget for 26-27, on the income, we're basically going 220,000. That's an 8.5% increase with hopefully new members and or increases in existing pledges. But it's a $45,000 less. Hello? Oh, I thought I lost it. $45,000 less than the budget for 25-26. Contributions and loose offerings, we decreased that based on what we've seen over the last few years. Endowment income, we've actually increased that. Thank you, Susan, Jeff, and Rebecca. Property usage, we kept the same. We're hoping that's going to be our big growth this year. Fundraising, we raised it. Thank you, Michael. Interest rates, basically, we reduced it because we see that interest rates are actually going down. We're not going to make as much. So, $339,500 was our budget for this year. In income, we actually took it to $294,100. Any questions on income? At the moment. Yes? What is cut from expenses? We're going to show you.
That's why we're here.
We're here because we didn't want you to hear it during the annual meeting and be like, wait a minute. You know, that's kind of a curveball. So we're basically trying to explain where we are right now. And good question, good lead in. So proposed budget, some of the changes we needed to balance the budget was we're thinking that we can carry over a projected surplus from 25-26. I do forecast that we will have one. And we did increase the fundraising budget from 10,000 to 12,000. The reductions, we reduced the landscaping contractors' costs, reduced the hours of the music administrator, We reduced the minister's health care insurance premiums, reduced the number or the cost of guest speakers and musicians, and then we're doing a restructure in communications and RE.
So, should I jump in here?
You can if you want me to show the numbers first.
Well, let me talk without numbers first. So the landscaping contractor, this year we did not have any budget for landscaping, and we learned that we really should have a budget for landscaping. And so the request was about 5,000, and I think we reduced that to 3,000. So we will have a budget. It won't be as much as requested, but we get it. The music administrator, Liam, was already in the process of revising his hours and job descriptions, so there were some planned savings there. The health insurance premiums, Reverend Ben receives health insurance, and he's been using his wife Lucinda's COBRA. The plan was for him to go on the UUA plan, which would have been quite expensive. And so instead, now he will stay on Lucinda's health insurance, which is not the same quality of plan that that the UUA plan would be. Guest speakers and musicians, again, that was an area where we provided some funding this year. It seems to be working really well. The requests were more than we could fund, and so we reduced those requests by about half. But we still have a small budget for guest speakers and musicians. And then we'll talk more in a minute about the restructuring of communications in RE. I'll ask Todd to say a few words, I guess, after we look at the numbers. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. If we look at the numbers, again, what you see, again, the new ministries, what was communication administration will drop by about 12,800. Social justice, thank you for your cuts. That was a nice gesture in a small budget anyway, but we appreciate that. The stewardship ministry is, again, it includes B&G, and that did go up. It's the only one that did. Fellowship ministry, yes, sorry, it is buildings and ground. Fellowship ministry stayed the same. Worship and learning ministry, which includes music, that also went down. So where we had a expense budget of $336,169, we now are proposing a budget of $307,839 as the new budget, which is a reduction of about $28,500. If we look at how that's going to be done, you see the income, you see our expense. We do a carryover from this year to help us. There is a contingency that we did, and we come out with a small loss of $14. Again, budgeting. All of this, especially this, is going to be, I don't know, I guess I want to say, it'll be constantly changing. There's a word for it. I just can't think of it.
In flux?
In flux. Okay, yes. If this grows, then we're going to be looking at how we can grow the expenses. We don't like having the cuts. We would like to ensure that things are kept on, but we have to do this because of the loss of income that we were hopefully projecting that didn't happen. Now, you were going to say something.
Yes. So I'm sure you have questions about restructuring a position for communications and religious education. And I'm going to ask Todd to say a few words because he's been working with Morgan and with Janae on this plan that the board put forward.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Good to see you today. So I don't know when it was, a month, 2 ago. You may also know that the board gets together and has a very intentional budgeting retreat. So we have to think really, really hard about this. And out of that retreat came a lot of the things Robert has already talked about. So I'll just say, pretend there was a $60,000 gap between our projected income and what expenses you all asked us for, right? So we were able to reduce that $60,000 gap to $45,000 with the carryover. So we got it down to $45,000. And then the other cuts Trish was talking about, removing health insurance premiums, down. We still were hovering around about $25,000. And we could not figure out you could pretend you have $25,000 in income, but that's not really a great way to do a balanced budget, which, by the way, Morgan reminded me, it's in our bylaws to have a balanced budget. So we looked at the budget and we started looking at which portions of the way we spend money get the most attention. And you might guess that the number one expense in the church is staffing. So staffing gets the biggest amount. The second biggest amount is buildings and grounds. There's a number of things about buildings and grounds that you can't really touch and why it's actually gone up, including you can't suddenly say, oh, let's reduce our energy costs. And we can do some practices, which Jeff and others have worked on over the years to reduce. Having things like the ways the air conditioner timers work now really do reduce our expenses. But we've really maximized the efficiency on all that kind of stuff. It's really, you can't really call on these things, and they go up 5%, things like that each year. So, the cost of power, the cost of materials and whatnot. So we had to look at staffing, really, as the place. Okay, how in staffing? So we partnered with Reverend Ben and Janae and started talking, and Janae's committee on ministry. While I'm on the board, I'm also on the personnel committee with Michael, and what we came up with was this landscape. We were like, what's all the information in front of us? Well, one piece of information that we had been hearing from the congregation all year, but really, really heard it at the annual church retreat, which was a couple weeks ago, was that there's a huge desire for the church to make sure there's adult education, adult spiritual formation offerings. There's a couple things you expect out of a UU church: Sunday service, children's RE, adult covenant groups, adult spiritual formation, the things that we expect at the institutional level that our church has not been able to offer. We haven't been organized really to offer those things at an institutional level. They've really been offered kind of at a one-off level for quite a while. So we had that piece of information. We had the piece of information that we just voted to ordain Janae. So Janae graduates from ministry, and standard would be the church that has been part of that experience votes, to ordain. And so next year, we're really excited that we get to have an ordination celebration here. We also understand that with that and with Janae's tenure, it's very standard to start supporting someone that you're ordaining, not to become a new minister by any means, but to expand their scope of work. What does it mean? What can they now offer? What's a little different? What helps them into their, there's a year kind of known as the internship fellowship year, where you do a certain number of hours to move forward. So in a few years, then Janae would be better set up to apply for full-time minister jobs at other churches, right? Because we're supporting our church, but we always have, as Sandra and others talked about in the service today, the health of the whole religion, the Unitarian Universalist religion in mind too. So we have all these pieces going on. So we approached Janae and said, hey, listen, you're also a person in all this, right? And so the thing we don't want to do is, hey, Janae, how does it feel to have your hours cut in half? Would that be great? Would you feel good for a year? On top of the fact that we just voted to ordain you, you just had a good job performance review, you have some really exciting hours, right? Not saying we couldn't have done that, 2-month notice, that those are things that can happen in a church, but we're like, that really doesn't match the requests we've been receiving from the church. That really would have had that kind of position start focusing mostly on children's RE again and drop all communications, which would have posed a couple of challenges. So we've been receiving some questions like, what's the creative way you've been thinking about this? So here's the math. You can do half of a position for 12 months, or you can do a full position for half a year, and it costs the same. So what the creative solution we came up with was, Janae deserves a new position within the church and a new title, which we're currently working on through personnel and Reverend Ben as the supervisor, and also the board. And she's fully aware of all this. We've met with her, and she knows all of this directionality. She's graduating from seminary, when we're really excited for her for that. She has some requirements for how to do some of those hours. And we think maybe that we might be able to make up the difference once we get into next year. So if we launched a part-time position now, probably we would lose our staff member and have to do a hiring, which costs money, and bring someone new in, and then there would be no chance to really benefit from adding a second service. We've never had a second service, but adding a second meditative or Vesper-style service during the week, adding scheduled, planned religious education, which we haven't had in a really, really long time. And the benefit of adding those while still maintaining youth RE, while still maintaining communications, really we felt was a very creative response. And the Venn diagram of what was good for Janae, what was good for the church, what was good for UU-ism at large just felt really good, and facing the budget shortfall that we're in right now. So with all that said, the reason we've been able to balance the budget with that final 25,000-ish that was hanging out is we erased, for now, half a year from Janae's new position. So Janae's new position for now would run July 1st for 25 weeks. All the math ended up adding up to 750 hours, which is like half a year, with a couple contingencies. One, is it the position that the church needs going forward? It also, from her perspective, is 8 months is nicer than 2 for an off-ramp, if that's needed. Did I say, I think I said 3 things, and the third thing is if there are funds available that the board can put toward extending that position for all of next year. Because we really think once, the summer is kind of a planning time, and then by maybe September, the second service could launch, and then really official adult education could launch, maybe some changes in some other areas. We think it's going to be exciting, and we really do think it's not a nice to have. Like institutionally, again, you gotta offer Sunday service, you gotta offer adult formation, you gotta offer covenant groups. Like these are the DNA of a UU church. If you're not offering all those things, it's very difficult to say we're offering the expectations of this kind of the kind of church we have, and if you will, the curriculum of being a UU church. So hopefully that's good news. It's not the best news, right? But it was a creative way, and let's take any questions that there might be on this concept. Can you bring the mic back?
I've just never really understood what the communication job is, what Janae does.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So we've been reviewing the. Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you so much. I understand that part of it now. Can talk about what the communications portion of the position has been. So that's important. So in the past, Janae is a 30-hour-a-week position, 15 hours to communications and 15 hours to RE, or religious education. And communications has been, a lot of it's a little hidden, and in some organizations, communications is an external activity, and in some it's an internal activity and a mix of both, right? So some of our external communications that are a little quiet is the upkeep of the website, things like that. Internal communications is more like the monthly newsletter and some other hidden things you might not see associated with, the way streaming might happen within a service. The way we're looking at those percentages is the new position Janae would have see if you can follow me here, of the 30 hours, 75% of that would be on religious education. So that's about 22 hours a week, we're thinking. And then about 8 hours would be on communication activities. To get to specifically what that actually looks like, because we have the same question too, and I know Janae does too, like going forward, what does this look like? We're gonna have a meeting, again, with the committee on ministry and some other leaders to put together the actual things that we need as a church rather than a list of tasks that might be interesting to do, right? So there's lots of ways to build those positions, but there may be some things that have to roll off Janae and go into a volunteer position, and that might happen, or we might say, well, we invented that, and that also might be something we have to do, but that also is the limits of creativity, I'll say, in trying to meet the moment of the budget shortfall, or the pledge shortfall. But thanks for the question, that was great.
Any other questions? Yes, Cal?
Not so much a question as a comment that I think Janae has provided an awful lot of value to this church. And I would hope that we would try to accommodate her going forward as best we can. I think you did a great job in putting all this together, and it's always difficult. Budget's a pain in the neck. And especially when there's a shortfall. But I just hope that going forward we'll keep in mind that this is a really valuable asset that we have for our church.
Oh yeah. I am really hopeful the position can be a whole year, once we get into the year. And I'm really excited about her participation in the creation of the position because she has some really, really good ideas for the things we've wanted. I think we haven't asked, perhaps, the right questions in the past, that we haven't received the answers, and so we're in this position with Reverend Ben again and everyone of asking different questions and along the lines you're talking about. But it's also our responsibility, I believe, that when we've had someone here, staff member or member, whatever, excited about being ordained and helping UUism be bigger, yes, we should be part of a really good, I don't want to call it a send-off, but like a launching pad, like a runway. And I really do really hope that this would help her have a better runway, even if it lasts only 6 months. New title and really cool things that she's implementing, those are great things to talk about, as you're looking for your next position.
Susan?
Just on the topic of this new change position, I want to say how happy I am to see the two things that I think would help this church the most. One, to have a Vespers type service, and second, to have more attention on adult spiritual growth and education. And the fact that we have someone who is talented in both of those areas, I just think it's a win-win, and I'm happy to see it happen.
So we said we have to have a balanced budget, and we're hoping that maybe more money will come in for starting in 2027 to expand. When we budget, can we have a contingency so that it's like, well, we think we're going to budget at 307 or whatever, but if we end up getting another, maybe you'll be talking about that. It's
No,
not
I'm
just
getting
about.
ready to answer your question.
Okay, go.
Well, we do have a small contingency. And in effect, the approach we're taking with Janae's position is a contingency because we hope it continues. But the board has heard me say this over and over again. The first rule of budgeting is that you don't solve for revenues. And so we can't just say, we'll add 20,000 in rental income, or we'll get another magical $20,000 contribution. So that's why we can't do any more than say this is our hope, and the contingency is that we get more funding to support the new position for a full year. And I will say that it's not entirely impossible.
So, but my question is, like,
When we vote in 2 weeks to adopt a budget, and then surprise, we get another $20,000 in income, will the board have capacity to go ahead and spend that money because we're still balanced? Or will it be like, sorry, we only said we would spend, you know what I mean? Like when we vote, we're voting on a budget with the contingency of if we get more, here's how we'll spend it.
That's a good point. Thank you. Yes. So if we get more funding, that's how the board will spend the additional funding.
Thank you, by the way. This has been a really clear presentation. I appreciate it. Regarding Janae, do the board and Janae have clarity around what her priorities and preferences would be beyond December? And the reason I ask that, I feel like she's in a state of flux in terms of she's got this internship year. Maybe, I don't know what her commitment, I have no idea what the time frame is for her to move from where she is now to where she wants to be in terms of having her own, being ordained, being a minister, getting hired. Does she anticipate there's going to be commitments that draw her away from what she does with the church today that would reduce her hours with us to shift into internship responsibilities or anything else? And does she have a good idea of what that priority would be, what that time frame would be? Would that occur in spring of 2027, or would that be more later in 2027, 2028? How would that happen?
Now, that's a great question. And right now, the limit of what we know is we are trying to make the position count, if you will, for both what the church needs, and that those 1/3 of the hours can also count for the internship, because that's part of the her strategic thinking about the best way for her to spend her time right now. Because if we were just saying there was a part-time position, she'd be like, okay, I gotta go find an internship. I gotta go solve this in another way. Beyond December, we're not aware yet. I think it's a really good question for personnel, right? And for supervisor to start asking on one-on-ones, and also as we're developing the position description that the board is going to have to vote on at the next meeting to even move forward with a new position. That's a good question to be asking Janae as part of it. Doesn't have to go in the position, but I think it can be part of the narrative as it's developed. But beyond that, I haven't had conversations, and I would think the supervisor or her committee on ministry would know the most.
Michael, did you have a question?
Is it reasonable to say that the board is hopeful that this new position, along with the newer emphasis on covenant groups, would be helpful in growth of the church and therefore new members, new pledges, new income? Is that part of the thought process?
Yeah. This direction, the strategic realignment of Janae's position, has been in discussion since January, and that started with personnel and with minister, and then also on the board, and then with Janae, talking about what the church needs. But what came up very, very strongly at that church retreat was these things have to be in place if we're going to grow. And part of pledging, of course, is part of growth. If we don't have these things, I would say it's a really good theory we're working with. If we're not able to stabilize the institutional level of the offerings that a church offers, it's very, very difficult to grow a church beyond where we're at. It's possible that we can grow our way out of this. It's also, I'll be honest, saying, oh, we're going to cut the communications position, to Claudia's point, doesn't sound like, oh, we're going to have to cut our new director of spiritual formation who runs our second service and adult ed. Sounds like something, right? Because it is something. It's more well thought. It has stronger reflective needs today of what the church needs versus maybe what's been more traditional for the last number of years. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
This is a question for Rob on something else. About the carryover from last year, plugging a hole with that 15,000, if you could go back to that slide. I'm just, two questions. Number one is, have we done that in past years? Have we carried over from a previous year to this year?
I don't know.
Yeah, we have, okay, because the first COVID year we did
The
that?
first COVID year,
Okay.
yes.
because my concern about it is that it is, in a way, one-time money, but it is being used on an ongoing budget that we have, it's multi-time expense on one-time money.
In my annual treasurer's report, I make that quite clear, that it's a one-time thing, and that it's sort of a stopgap for that one specific purpose. I've been monitoring almost daily, watching the balances and looking at, and right now we're about $21,000 in surplus, but I anticipate that going down, and I think 15 is a reasonable number that at the end of the year, and again, it's the employee gaps of employment, it's not spending a large amount on the maintenance. There's other employment costs that didn't happen that we had budgeted for. Part of it was the holiday pay was separate, but ending up putting the holidays in for the employees, I have that money that's still left over. So there's a lot of different little things that I see will carry to the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, and I can see that too. I think that's great. My concern is that it's happening this one time, and at the end of next year, we wouldn't have that carryover
That is
because
correct.
everything changes. And just to keep that in mind, that it is one-time money.
Yes, and, we may face difficult decisions for next budget year, but, I'm an optimist, and I think we'll do well. In this context, I want to mention one other thing, and that is that, we replaced the roof this year. It's all paid for, it's all done. We did that with $53,000 in grants from UUA, and the rest of it, about $32,000, we paid for. The church paid for. So if we had not done that, the balances that you see in our checking account or our reserve fund would be that much higher. So that's why I don't feel bad about taking $15,000 and putting it towards next year. The other thing is that it's still possible that we will get money from FEMA. and if
You're jinxing it.
Yeah. Okay, I'll say no more. But if we do, that we could repay ourselves the $32,000 that we spent for the roof.
I just want to say, because I have a little bit of insight on this from doing the finance committee with Rob. We all owe him a tremendous thanks for all the work that he did.
I'm still fighting the battle.
This man has sliced through red tape with a machete and banged his head against government walls. Again,
Yeah.
nothing but props.
I still am hopeful about that, but I don't want to jinx it. By the way, just so you know, this is what AI thinks of our church. I asked when I was creating this presentation, I said, show me a picture or a description of UU Church of St. Pete. That is exactly what it created. I didn't put any other input into it, so this is what AI thinks of us.
So I'm just wondering, why are people standing in the water?
I also think that we're supposed to build a second floor. A second floor. Anyway, so thank you all very, another question?
Do you have another question? Okay.
Thank you. I don't want to open a can of worms here, but we were recently designated as a part of the historic district of St. Petersburg. So was the Mirror Lake district made into a historic district. Has anyone looked into the transfer of development rights that we are eligible for, and they are monetary?
So about a year ago, we had a building use meeting where we discussed those rights because we're never going to build taller, which means that we can sell the space above us. It's not been pursued. It is still out there. Go ahead.
I have an update.
Okay.
I just talked to Ellen Hayes about this morning, and she is working with Preserve the Burg, and we are going through the process of applying for permission to sell those rights. So it would be a nice can of worms. What's that?
I don't know if you're looking for volunteers, but I'd like to volunteer to be involved with that effort.
Absolutely. Do you know Ellen? Okay, we'll make sure you connect.
So with that, I'm going to say.
I want to add one other thing,
Okay.
which is, thank you, Sophie. This has been on YouTube Live.
Thank you. Yay.
And so if you have friends, family who couldn't be here, they'll be able to watch it on YouTube. And I really encourage you to spread the word, so that when we get to the annual meeting, we're all on the same page. We understand what it is we're doing here. So,
And
thank
we
you for
are
coming.
optimistic. This is a.
I never thought I'd hear him say that.
Well, believe me, Trish and I have talked at length about the budget. Many, many days have gone by where we've sat there and discussed what we were going to do. I am optimistic. I think there are some really good things happening here. I like the way that the board made a decision to transform what could be a detriment and losing a valuable resource into something that could actually be positive for not only that employee, but the church itself. And that's wonderful. So I'm very happy about that.